going on, y'all? It's your boy DJ Skye, and we are back with another video. And of course, we're going to be reviewing Salt Lake City episode 20 or episode 200. I don't know. It feels like the season is going on and on and on. This is probably one of the longest seasons. I don't know. They haven't done a season like this in a very long time. But in order to break it all down, we have our boy Adam from Up and Adam back with us to do this little deep dive into episode 20 or 200 of Salt Lake City.
Or 200.
Adam, does this feel very long to you, or is it just me?
I feel like we've kind of had two seasons because episodes 1 through 10, I was like, okay, I feel like we're going nowhere. And then episodes like, I think midway through 10 to now getting the finale episode, which is 21, I'm like, okay, you got me. But yes, it does feel long.
You're right. It does feel like two very different seasons. So I don't know. But this is episode 20, y'all. Next week, or we think next week, is the finale, which will be episode 21. Now, we're going to discuss this episode. But before we do that, I need to know what you guys would rate the episode on a scale of 1 to 10. Adam, thoughts on the episode? And shout out to everybody in the chat. I see you guys. Thank you for joining us. I really, really appreciate you guys for, getting into it. Okay? Tell us what you would rate it.
It's a 10.
You gave it a oh my God.
I never give it a 10. This episode had, I'm like, she said, what? Wait, Whitney's going after Meredith. Hold on, wait, this is happening? Like, the whole thing gave me whiplash for the first 30 minutes, and then it finally calmed down. It's a 10. This was definitely a 10 for me.
I'm in shock. That is your first 10 of the season. I need just a little bit of extra. What made this one stand out so much to you that it took it to the next level? Because the past couple of episodes have been chaotic. So what was it that gave this episode the special sauce?
I think it was kicking it back off with the Lisa Barlow, what we're calling a hot mic moment, to the drunk antics with everyone, to Whitney being like the mouthpiece and not letting anything go, Meredith having to defend her father's memorial, having the conversation with Jen Shaw and her attorney, having like the Mary Cosby of it all, like the whole thing, like, I'm richer than all of you, liar. Like, it was just like, what is happening in this cast? I was here for it.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a 9, and that's so interesting that I'm like lower than you. I'm the Simon today.
I'm Paula Abdul today.
You are the Paula today. I'm gonna give it a 9 only because I feel like we've been on a how like some housewives shows, especially Beverly Hills, is very good for this. It is a very slow build to some type of big crescendo, and then there's a slow decline, and then there's another crescendo. This has been at its peak for like the past 4 episodes, and I was almost exhausted by it. As I'm taking my notes, I'm literally like, what? Typically, Adam, when I make my notes for a TV show, I'm going scene by scene typically, right? But on this one, I felt like there were no scenes. This whole first part of the episode was literally one huge, ginormous fight that went from one room to the next. I will tell you, though, that seeing Lisa Barlow and Meredith raise the bar in terms of their level of theatrics, I was here for it. Lisa going buck wild in her room, that was priceless to me.
I was not expecting that, and we saw Meredith Marks on Watch What Happens Live a couple episodes ago, and Andy said, we obviously gave you all of the footage, the rest of the episodes, right the day before the reunion, so you didn't see that hot mic moment until the day before, and that's when you finally saw Lisa Barlow after that. And she's like, yes, and we address it, and you guys will see it at the reunion. What I can say is she told me, her answer to me was she said that somebody told her that Meredith said her house was ugly. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. You just said her whole fake family. Like, you went, not only did you, and I'm thinking, Meredith, you got upset because of the social media manager or whatever with the tweets when it comes to Brooks Marks, but she just said you're phony ASS family. What? She didn't just say Brooks. She went in on Seth. That's Chloe. That's her other son, Reed. Like no, this was a lot.
It was. And to your credit, I feel like I do wonder how that's going to impact Meredith going forward. I do feel like we're going to get a little bit of Lisa Vanderpump grudge holding coming from Meredith next season. But honestly, rightfully so. You know, people will probably say, well, she's still holding on to this. What? I guarantee you next year, when we're having this conversation about Meredith, people are going to be talking about, oh my God, she just needs to let it go. I would never listen. I love Lisa Barlow. I love the energy she is bringing to this season. But in terms of what she said, I just don't know if I was Meredith, I would forgive her. However, this is reality TV, and stranger things have happened, and they do need to make a show together. And sometimes people get a little crazy when those cameras turn on, as you know as well.
Right.
Something happens. There is something that changes in you when you have cameras following you for a very long time. Your patience gets short. Things bother you more than they probably would have. And then you're also operating within the production bubble.
Right.
And that bubble does not stop. It is an engine that just keeps going until you film your very last scenes, in which case you just want these people to leave your home. Okay? I want production to leave my home. I'm sick and tired of my castmates. I don't want to see nobody else.
Yeah, but I also have that kind of old school mentality of like, and I don't know where I got this from, but it's like that mafia, you don't go against the family. And I think like that's a weird thing. If you want to attack me, my looks, how I talk, my career, you could go down a whole list. I don't care. But once you start lumping in the family, that's where you lose me. And I don't know how she's going to come back from that. But like you said, they do have to film a show with each other. I think that was part of Heather Gay's point when she was looking across the table at Mary, like, how can we fix this with Jenny? She's like, I don't want to fix it. I don't like her. But Heather's like, not without breaking the fourth wall. She's pretty much saying, we have to film a show together. You need to, whether you like it her or not, this is the conflict. We need the resolution.
But the reality of her experience was that I'm sure she felt like there was some energy there coming her way from Jenny that she just couldn't let go of. Right. And that's the thing about Mary. It's either you're going to like her for that aspect of her personality, or you're not. And the same could be said for Kim Richards. I mean, in very different ways. Let me just say that. Because Kim Richards was very much like, this is who I am, my problems, my issues, and all. And I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm not going to play nice with these women like Lisa Renner if I don't want to.
Right.
Don't ask me questions about my sobriety. It is off limits. And she did tell her that several times throughout that season before in Amsterdam things blew up. So I don't know. This show is a very interesting, almost sometimes cautionary tale of how housewives should and maybe should not work. But that's a whole nother discussion.
And to be fair, don't ask a question you don't want the answer to. Like, I appreciate that with Mary. Like, what do you want her to do? You want her to give you the cotton candy answer that you're looking for and to say, oh, yes, I think Jenny's amazing. I like her. You know what? Right now, we're just having a rough patch. No, Mary's like, that's not how I feel. I don't like you. I don't like you. That's it. I don't want to be friends with you. It's her prerogative. It's her position. She's allowed to have that position. So I agreed with Meredith on that. She's just simply saying she doesn't want to be friends with her. Some of us don't want to be friends. That's fine.
Because Adam, think about it. I mean, like real life. Would we hang out with someone that we don't like?
No, I cut people all the time. Like I can count my friends on one hand.
There you go. Like I'm not doing it. Like I'm just at that place in my life where I'm not going to put myself around anybody else's negative energy or someone that I just don't care for. I'm not going to do it. It's just not going to happen.
We've had these conversations, I think, off camera, not on here. And like it's true. I think too, as everyone, like as we all grow and get older and we evolve, I think it's so important we start, building these different relationships in our own families, and whatever energy you bring in is so crucial because it impacts your life and how you're treating the other people who are important to you in that life, especially if you're carrying this like negative weight and it's like hitting you. It's no. I mean, if Jenny is negative to Mary and that's how she feels and she doesn't want that to impact her life, I'm all here for it. Then cut it out.
Boom.
Yeah.
Easy said. All right. So what did you think about that moment with Lisa basically telling the rest of the ladies that she was richer than all of them?
Listen, if she's not wrong and I don't know what that had to do with the conversation. She was saying, I don't need this. I'm richer than all of you, which I thought was so funny because Jackie Goldschneider from Real Housewives of New Jersey actually tweeted a photo from the scene and said, cheers to being the richest BIT on the cast with like a wink face. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was comedic. I just didn't really know how it pertained to the show. And, she's saying, I don't need this, but yet you were the Kyle Richards of this show or the Charisse of Potomac. You were the one who they first went to and had kind of introduced other characters to the show. So maybe there's an ego that comes with that too. I don't know. And like you said, when cameras are around for long enough, you lose your patience and you say things sometimes that you wouldn't necessarily say without the cameras.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the truth. And I feel like it was just to me another layer of imperfect Lisa, because outside of these last couple of episodes and actually much of the latter part of this season, I do feel like Lisa has wanted to portray, an air of perfection. Right. I understand it because you want to we all want to be seen in a certain light. However, it is honestly usually through people's imperfections that we actually begin to relate to them more. So these moments that she's having, while I don't necessarily relate to that comment about being the richest person there, I just feel like her breaking that barrier will make her more relatable to some people, right?
Right.
Oh, so you do break. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you do have those moments where it's not so perfect and posed and you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like we need to see that.
I agree with that too. And when she was defending what she said, and I like Lisa Barlow, like even when I went to Salt Lake, and I've said this to people before, I was supposed to meet up with her and there was a situation that came up, but since she couldn't come, she had Vita Tequila sent to my hotel and just super sweet. And I feel like, though, if we're breaking down the hot mic moment, a lot of times, even if we don't mean to put this stuff out there and say these things, when you say it, it's coming from some sort of feeling inside. You don't just manufacture a statement like that, like calling her a WHO, saying that they can't afford a house because her husband's always in between jobs, saying that she effed half of New York, saying that her whole family is phony. You didn't just make one comment. You made multiple comments. And that doesn't just stem from like, she said my house was ugly. That's stuff that's festering in there. And you're a human. And it came out. And now you just have to, in Lisa Rinna's words, own it. So
you do have to own it. You
know?
do have to own it. Lisa is still going off. She goes off for quite a while.
Yes.
Meredith goes into her room in hiding, and then Mary convinces her to, engage to a certain degree. And then it was very strange, the series of events that happened next. And I know I'm going to gloss over some things because I just kind of feel like I have so many notes here about this one scene.
Yeah.
But it played out very much like some type of like weird movie to me. And what you end up having is this sort of battle with Meredith and Whitney. That's the culmination of that scene with Lisa and the rest of the girls coming to try to, console her or calm her down or whatever they were trying to do. Then it moves over into Whitney going to try to confront Meredith about what day her father's memorial was on. And this all stems from a phone call that Lisa had with Meredith while they were on the bus headed to Vail after Jen Shah's arrest, wherein Lisa tells the group that Meredith was at her father's memorial. Now, whether or not when Lisa said it, I don't know if she meant she's just the memorial. She was thinking of the memorial in terms of a couple of days, just being there as a part of the memorial. But for some reason, it turned into a very specific date type of situation where Heather recalls a Tuesday, Lisa recalls a Monday.
Right.
So now you have Whitney confronting Meredith about this yet again, a drunk Whitney, mind you, okay? A drunk Whitney,
No.
all right? Which is a Whitney I honestly do not care for. But she was working, but I don't care for it. Mostly because I just felt like this is someone's, I mean, this is her father has just passed. Like, this is still fresh. I thought that Whitney's father at that point was fair game to me for her to try to get Whitney to understand exactly what she was putting her through. And for Whitney to call that a low blow. And she tells Meredith, well, you know where your father is.
This is, my fiance Jason lost his father a little over 4 years ago, and his memorial lasted 3 days. And we were talking about this while watching the show. Like, sometimes, there are wakes, there's the funeral, there are a couple days where people can come pay their respects. And sometimes it's a process. It's not just all in one sitting. So I think, again, the timeline is irrelevant. It's almost like that saying of you're making a mountain out of a molehill here. Mm-hmm. And for them to even question this, it goes back to the family comments. It's like, if my dad, in a normal situation, if God forbid, when that day happens, if somebody came to me, like talking out of the left side of their face, being crazy, questioning, like my father who just passed away, you would get a much stronger reaction than what Meredith gave. I think it's completely disrespectful. It's disgusting, and that should not be a topic of conversation. And to be fair, Meredith, the comparison, Whitney might not have liked it, but it definitely got her attention. She's saying, how does this feel? You don't like it?
I mean, to me, it was fair game at that point, because it reminded me of that moment with Teresa and Jackie from last season, where Teresa is hounding, Jackie, and Jackie finally breaks and has to really give her an analogy that she can understand.
Right.
And of course, Teresa blows up. And then, of course, Whitney, basically says, well, that's a low blow. You know where your father is. Yeah, he's not here. Like, come on now. Like that. I was just like, that's crazy to me. If anybody, Whitney should have been, in my mind, more sensitive to that, because she too has an issue with her father and she does not know where he is. So why wasn't she the person that was like, okay, you guys, let's back up off of this, because she's still probably going through it.
How could you not be grieving? It just happened, right? Like, that's not even something, especially for Jason, for the first, and I don't mean to put his personal business out here, but for the first at least 2.5, 3 years, he struggled so hard with that.
I can't only imagine.
It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I remember like thinking, I don't know if he's going to get out of this, right? It was just like heart-wrenching. And for this, you keep digging and digging a hole, but I feel like it's completely improper. And in the moment that you're bringing it up, and you're yelling at Meredith, just give us a date. And why won't you give us a date? And Meredith says, I don't owe you anything. I saw on Twitter where people were like, well, Meredith's obviously lying because she won't give a date. I'm like, no, I would have had the same stance. I don't have to tell you at this point, I'm not entertaining this conversation anymore. Do you think my dad's going to show up tomorrow and be alive and something like I'm lying to you? That's on you guys. I don't owe you nothing.
And the fact that that the date of her father's memorial is somehow in conjunction with this notion that she may have tipped off the law to let them know that everyone was going to be at Beauty Lab so that they can come and arrest Jen, is overshadowing the fact that Jen was arrested and that there is a years-long investigative probe into this scenario, is baffling to me, particularly since Whitney, who has watched Ozark, seems to understand and have been able to describe exactly what was going on. It's odd to me. It is very, very odd. It's crazy.
I completely agree with that. And I think that this is such a hard one to sit here and try to dissect. The whole thing, like, I think it's so funny because I feel like these housewives have the ability to, when you go in on them and it's your turn, because everybody takes a turn in the hot seat, right? But when you go in on them and you know, it's their turn, they're like, oh, how could you do that? And it's like, what do you mean, how could I do that? You just brought up everything that would, you know, like cut to the bone. So, I mean,
it's strange.
It's
It's
strange.
very strange. So then Whitney runs back and she relays in a lie, because she told a lie. I mean, I want to be clear about that. She tells Jen Shah that she went to Meredith to apologize. I saw or heard zero apologies. Maybe it was when the camera turned for 1 second, but I really didn't hear not one single apology come from her lips. And then she made it seem like she just told Meredith off. Okay. And I was like, you're completely relaying this scenario quite differently from how it went, so you can get high five and get hyped up by Jen.
I think that was her Margarita perspective on how that went. But to be fair, when she was on her way, and I'm just jumping ahead for a second, but when she was on her way, her and Heather over to Meredith's house to do this workout, which if I could work out like that with wine and have you attach, you know, stuff to me and I can walk out with this booming body, I want to know where you get this machine. But
I've done that before, and I can tell you it does not work in one setting. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't want the machine. I'll just do cardio. But you know, I thought when Whitney said to Meredith, she's like, yeah, and she said, you know, you're like, my dad's an addict or whatever, or my dad something. It was like, that is not what Meredith said. But then we saw the same moment from Jen and Jenny while they're all fighting too, where Jen said, well, Jenny said you called the FBI. Jenny's like, I didn't say that. And she's like, oh, no, you didn't say that. Sorry. Let that one go. And I'm like, wait, you're all relaying misinformation right now. And that's the problem here.
It was so strange to me. So then I don't know what happened first. If the group conversation happened where Meredith went into the room and she was demanding to know who said what about her father's memorial. And Whitney says, well, I did, and Lisa did. And then there's this conversation. Lisa comes back out swinging again. She's like, I didn't say that. Actually, I do remember it being definitely Jenny questioning it, and maybe even Heather. I don't recall exactly what Lisa said. I know she definitely had a discussion with Heather about it solo, about whether or not those dates were correct and whether or not Meredith was possibly not, you know, where she said she was at the time that she said she was. But I just found that conversation very, very interesting because it's bothersome to me that Meredith feels like she has to continue to acquiesce to these women's demands.
Right. Well,
and I understand it from the nature of a reality TV perspective, but in real life, I would have left.
I mean, I wouldn't have sat through. This is first of all, this is obviously not real life because this isn't how people behave in real life. And even, I mean, honestly, I was kind of the Jen Shah of it all in the moment where, you know, all of this was happening and Jen Shah looked because she walked up on Lisa Barlow screaming, F Jen Shah. And she walks in and she's like, wait, me? What did I do? And then once they're all fighting, Jen literally looked at all the women. She's like, I'm either leaving or we're settling this right now. And I was like, I'm with Jen. I want to settle this now. Like, we can't have this go on. There is way too much in play right now. And then another favorite moment, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but when Whitney, she was going to call out Mary, and Mary just looked at her and was like, get out of my face. Goodbye. And she's like, not bye. Hi, I'm Whitney. And she's like, Mary looks and she's like, I don't know would she say something about her brain's not developed? I'm like, this is, what is happening? What is happening?
When Whitney went charging into the kitchen to try to confront Mary, you would have thought she was going to yank Mary up by her neck. But as soon as she sees her, she stops dead in her tracks, and Mary is just sitting there like,
yeah. It reminds me of one of those moments like, it's like somebody you could see where Heather Gay was the one who mentioned it. And this is why Bad Weather is kind of funny to me, because we get these duos on these different franchises like Sonia and Ramona, who are so annoying on cast trips and have to take the first room and they band together. Giselle and Robin are like the same, you know, and then Emily and Gina on OC. But we get Bad Weather on Salt Lake. And when Heather said, where's Mary now protecting Meredith and having her back? Whitney's like, margarita light bulb. Oh yeah. And she's running and storming in there like, Mary, where are you, Mary? But eventually, you know, you're putting it on for the cameras and you're giving us this big reaction. You're going to find Mary. So before you go on this rant and you're like making it look like this is about to be a whole production and you're about this and you're ready for it, just know there has to be, like, you will find her and you eventually have to have this like knockout drag out. And when Mary, one thing that I do appreciate about Mary, something that we're about to see in the finale and last night's episode with, you know, the finale, Jenny Wynn throwing the glass and Mary being like, I'm not going to engage in that. You are pathetic. And then last night, her saying, you know, I'm not drunk. I'm not doing this. I'm like, I appreciate Mary for that, because it looks like some people are trying to get a reaction out of Mary and trying to get her to give something here. And she's like, I'm not doing this with you. I don't owe you nothing.
I loved it. I just feel like, you know, it's got to be a difficult situation because we see Meredith definitely unraveling when these women come for her. And I you know, housewife reaction, and I love it. You know, I want someone that reacts, but I can also appreciate someone that doesn't react because they're not going to give that person what they wanted. And I don't know what Whitney thought that she was going to do in that moment, because for me, it was so hypocritical for her to be running around trying to find Mary to be there for Meredith when you were just the one questioning Meredith about whether or not she was at her own father's memorial. You are the one who put Meredith in this situation. Now you are demanding that someone else be there for her. Get out of here. Like, just go away, bro. Like, I can't.
I'm loving watching Jen Shah in this too, because Jen Shah's looking like kind of like I was the one who had all of the over the top moments last season. Like, you got, like, even when Heather's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mary Cosby, you married your step granddaddy. And you see Jen and she's like, I already did this last year. I'm not doing it again. But you see her and she's like, you guys can have this. I have bigger fish to fry right now. Like, go on, do it. Almost like it just, the whole thing is comical because even going into the season, especially with everything hanging over, you know, the situation that Jen Shah is currently navigating, I felt like this would be probably a very hard season for her and a hard season for everyone to watch. Like, we would have a lot more bigger reactions like we did get out of season 1. And we've gotten a couple, but last season you even said at one point that you felt like it was getting kind of exhausting to where you can't have somebody on 10 every episode. And we're not getting those same reactions from Jen this season. We've gotten a couple, but the other women are carrying it too.
Yeah. And as they need to, because I feel like, you know, honestly, I just feel like what was supposed to happen was this whole situation with Mary Cosby and her church, and they're trying to make it a big thing, right?
Right.
You know, and we've had conversations on here before about everybody in this situation should probably leave the churches out of it. You know, right. One of the things that I found interesting, and I'm gonna jump around it, you know, because we can do that. When we did get to Mary's church later on, you know, we saw Jen Shah go into Mary's church because Mary had invited her. And, you know, Jen Shah talked about the people in Mary's church really kind of, you know, looking at Mary as, you know, I don't want to say being obsessed by her, but you know what I found funny, and I could be wrong in this, and I just thought it was such a pivotal thought that I had. I know a lot of churches like that, to be very honest with you. I've grown up, I've seen a lot of churches very similar to this. But the key difference that I think that I've seen in those churches was that the pastor at the center of the church, who was being worshiped and obsessed over by the members of the church, the pastors were usually men.
Right.
I don't know that people are necessarily used to seeing a woman in this position, being adored and worshiped by the members of the church in such a way. And it just kind of hit me. That's really the biggest difference that I've seen, because a lot of the churches that I've seen and gone to that remind me of what we've seen with Mary's church, the pastors were all men.
Right.
And there was no problem with it.
I was trying to understand, and this is one thing that I feel like this is a conversation that deserves to be had, because I I'm always upfront about the fact that my family, you know, like we would say grace at the table and we were taught to pray, but we weren't very active in a church. Like we moved around a lot. We didn't have a church, you know? So watching this, I didn't understand. And I even had to ask Jason, who was from the Mormon church, is this something that's like exhibited a lot? You know, it's not something I understood, but a lot of people would answer and say, this is part of the Pentecostal church. You would see this more in a Pentecostal church.
And that's not to say, listen, for people who, you know, may have women as pastors of their church, this is probably not anything new to you. But I
Right.
would just say to the greater population who may not have women as pastors in their churches, this may seem a different type of way than if it were a man. And I just honestly think that that's one of the reasons, not the sole reasons, why Mary is perceived in the way that she is.
Well, and you know, in your live chat, Michelle with an X said it was a Mother's Day service, if I recall. So was the appreciation so off? And that kind of, maybe that was a part of it too, where, you know, they were kind of appreciating her more as like a matronly figure, like a matriarch of the church or a motherly figure, and trying to just go around the room. And I thought some of it was funny. Like, you are the best friend, you are the best dresser. And some of the comments, I'm like, okay, this is all right.
And you know, they caught the wildest moments. And they showed us that on TV too.
And that's what I said too, for people who were like picking it apart. I'm like, you know, that this church service was probably 2 to 3 hours, maybe even more, could even have been 4 hours, because sometimes church services are really long. And we got about 4 minutes of edited, like, this is what's going to make the biggest impact if we put it in an episode and get a reaction. So we're going to play off of the fact that there's this rumor that there are cult allegations and that everyone worships Mary and that it's weird. And we're going to put in the moments where it makes it kind of play into that narrative. That's what I feel like we got.
And the pastor ends up becoming the person who is sometimes worshipped in a lot of churches, is because a lot of people consider them messengers from God, right? When we go to church, really, we're going there to praise God, not the pastor. But somehow I think what happens in a lot of churches is that high-ranking officials get sometimes placed on a higher level in terms of how people think of them because they are delivering the word. So I just had that thought this morning, and as I was like finishing my workout, I was like, I wonder if that's the reason why people are so obsessed with this whole thing, because as the conversation continues to come up about the church, none of this shocks to me. It's not a shock to me. It's not surprising. I've heard all of this before about a lot of different churches.
Right.
I just had to get that off my chest.
That was heavy. I felt it.
I felt it. Oh, my bad. I unloaded on you, Adam. I'm sorry about that. Now, I do want to talk about the next day. You know, if this episode had been the finale, I would have thought that this episode was Mary's exit episode. Like, this were her. I would have thought that by watching this episode that this was her last season. Because she said several key things to Whitney. And when Lisa came into the room and they were confronting her in the kitchen. And Lisa asked Mary, why was she here? And Mary said, this was my last attempt at trying to be friends with you.
Right.
And then she said, I'm done. And then the next day, as they're leaving, they're at breakfast and she's telling Meredith, you know, I felt like she was trying to convince Meredith to ride back in the SUV with her.
Right.
But Meredith was like, no, I'm going to ride in the Sprinter because I want to hear what these women got to say about me. Smart on Meredith's point. And I think it was also telling in that moment that as Mary was leaving, she rode separately in the SUV. And she was just like, I'm done with these women. So to me, especially knowing what we know now, it seemed as though she was going to leave on her own in some way, shape, or form. Now, the tweets that are to the contrary that are out there right now, they don't help me make sense of the situation. But it just felt like an ending for her.
Well, you know, and it's so funny too, because Meredith deciding to ride in the Sprinter van, then we get no Sprinter van footage because she was in the Sprinter van. Had she have not been in the Sprinter van, we would have had, I'm sure, at least a 2-minute clip of somebody saying something in that van about what went down in Zion. But no, I agree with you. It did kind of seem like an exit, but I feel like next week's episode, if it is next week with the Super Bowl, like you said, I feel like that episode will feel more like an exit with the way that Mary's walking out and Ginny slams the glass. And she's like, if you thought I was done the episode before the finale, I'm not doing this.
There you go. We get back to Salt Lake City, and I'm not looking at my notes, but we get a conversation with Jen and her lawyer. What did you make of that? I feel like we haven't had enough of these conversations.
It just scares me for Jen, only because of just this conversation. And I'm not a lawyer, but, you know, like I'm always on here talking about Emily. And I had a conversation with Emily, and she raised an interesting concern. So by Jen Shah having these conversations with her attorneys, apparently on camera, it waives something called your lawyer-client privilege, attorney-client privilege, which means when they go into court, the court can't necessarily address the private conversations between Jen and her attorney because that is their privilege. You can't ask them what they talk about or to share text messages or phone calls. But now, since you decided to film with the attorney, from what I gathered from Emily, you waive that right. And in court, they can call the attorney up now and say, okay, well, what conversations did you have about this? Under penalty of perjury, answer the question. If you answer it as a lie, that is a problem and you will go to jail. So the whole thing and having these conversations with the attorney on camera, it scares me only for like what's to come. Like, just because who would ever want to be in this position? The whole thing is like crazy. But then also when the attorney kind of not slipped up, but spoke up and said, you know, Stuart Smith has his own attorney and obviously you can't talk to Stuart. And Jen's like, no, I know, but you're talking to his attorney, right? And her attorney goes, yeah, but we're on the same side. And then looks at the camera and goes, well, we're not on the same side, but we're on like, you know, right now we're not opposing each other. But then gave her the very real, you know, realization of, listen, if Stuart Smith decides he can potentially take a plea deal and flip on you and try to throw you under the bus as this, you know, ringleader of this whole operation. And you see Jen's face, like the whole thing, I just couldn't imagine. It would feel so surreal to be somebody in this position going through it and trying to, it's wild. It's just wild.
It is wild to me. And I guess, you know, you bring up a couple of good points. I mean, how many real conversations can they really have with cameras there? As we did see, that scene was pretty short. I guess it's just that with so much talk about it, and we never saw any conversations with Erika Jayne and her lawyers on the show, so I guess we can't expect too much. Side note, I do want to ask you about this because I know you probably know a little bit more than I know. With regards to the Erika Jayne situation and her and them, like her business was something happened with her business this past weekend.
Yes. So her attorneys know me because they bring me up in the court case. Twice now. But with Erika in this situation, what happened was it's something to do with the franchise tax board. And apparently, from what I'm gathering, they were allegedly not reporting taxes correctly on the company EJ Global. So the California Tax Franchise Board decided to actually suspend this business. And now Ronald Richards, who you don't want to be on his radar, he's on top of it. He's on Twitter. If there's something to be found, he's going to find it. And he's not only going to put a tweet out about it, but he's going to attach real documents and evidence, which is kind of like, what are you going to call the man, a liar? He's attaching documented evidence. He was pretty much saying that Erika's attorney, I'm going to say allegedly, was allegedly signing documents that pertain to her company, EJ Global. And by doing so, that puts him in the line of fire too for alleged criminal activity, which the whole thing is like, it's just all wild. First of all, I wouldn't want to represent I wouldn't want to associate my name and sign anything on behalf of Erika. But Erika too, you can see the difference with Erika and Jen. Erika comes from a background of being married to a very high power attorney. And I think that she knows how to navigate this stuff. And I don't think she would waive attorney-client privilege. That's why we never saw conversations with her and her attorneys, because she doesn't want those conversations to be brought up in court. That is the only safe private space she has right now. Otherwise, everything else is documented. It's all out there. And we're not even at the biggest problem point for Erika. Right now, she's fighting to not have to pay this $25 million back. But once that's over, she's not looking at jail time. She's not being, convicted of a crime. But once that's over, if the California Franchise Tax Board, if they're already putting eyes on you, that means the IRS is coming next. And you have so much footage of you claiming, oh, you guys think that I'm one of those wives that don't know what goes on in the finances. My name are on those, my name's on those tax returns too. I see the tax returns, I sign them. And the IRS is going to be like, this is what you said. This is the business. This is how much you're claiming. And you didn't pay taxes on, like nothing. Like this is your taxes and the money that you're claiming to make. It's not adding up. And also from what I was hearing, Ronald Richards kind of explained it as they were using EJ Global every year. It was taking a loss as a business. They were always losing money. So not having to pay taxes back into it. So that imagine, let's say you have one of your favorite YouTubers. Like, do you know who Mr. Beast is? Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Beast. Now, let's say Mr. Beast, let's throw out a random number, is making $10 million a year on this business. But then every year on tax returns has so many write-offs that $10 million, it doesn't count. He's not paying taxes back on it because he spent more money than the $10 million. It's always a loss. That's a huge red flag.
And I think from what my limited knowledge of tax laws is that you have about 5 years that you can take like losses on a business,
right?
Before like they start to say, well, you should be making some type of money at this point,
right?
So that's also, I guess, another red flag. And I wanted to bring this up because I also thought it was a good kind of juxtaposition with what we saw last night with Jen Shah. We've never seen that with Erika Jayne. We've never seen her have any discussions with her lawyers. Anything that we have heard has come usually from the outlets, and Erika has been very tight-lipped about the aspects of the case per se. But what she did do was she confused us with tales of Tom and Cliff's and other things that went on that really just confused us so much so that we almost forgot that she was, having these issues of her own. But with
it's
Jen,
almost like, look over here while I do this over here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with Jen, we have her trial coming up in March, correct?
Correct.
What happens after the trial? I mean, I know that you're not a legal expert, but I talked
with Emily about it enough. So
yeah, I know that you have a bit more knowledge about how that will work for her after that point.
So she might actually not be going to trial in March. We're going to have to wait and see because originally she was supposed to go to trial in October and it got pushed back due to lack of courtrooms because of the pandemic. And that could easily happen again. We're going to have to wait and see, but they could even do it last minute. If she does go to court in March, she will have to, based off of my conversation with Emily, the people who have taken plea deals, a part of their plea deals is to share whatever they know about Jen and kind of all pointing at her as like this mastermind. And that lessens their sentences. So Jen will have to watch all of these defendants, because there's 10 or 11 of them at this point, come up and take the stand and legitimately say, this is what I know. This is what she did. And she's going to have to listen to every single one of those defendants over the course of, I believe it's like a month or 2 months. She'll have to listen to all of it. And then after she listens to all of it, that's when the defense team will start and they'll bring her in and kind of play out her side. And the jury will decide whether you are guilty or not guilty. And then it'll take them another month or two to come up with that verdict. And once they come up with after the verdict, it'll take them another month or two to come up with sentencing. And if they come up with a guilty verdict, they could either let her go home for a month or two while they're waiting for the next court date to decide on sentencing, or they could arrest her. It's so up in the air. But for Jen right now, she said something really important last night. She's maintaining her innocence, which is important too, because in America, it's you are innocent until proven guilty, right? And she's saying, I'm innocent of these crimes. This is not what it is. And that's what she said last night on the episode. I only have one option here, is to go to trial and fight for my life, because anything else is me saying that I did this when she's saying I did not. So it's going to be interesting. And also, you know, all of the press is going to be on it. I already know so many people who are lining up to go to, you know, New York and watch this trial play out. The courtrooms could potentially be open, and they will let random people in to watch this, which is, it's just a big spectacle. I mean, it gives me anxiety. The whole thing gives me anxiety.
In real time, because I know this hadn't happened on the show, and they did mention Stuart, and I just saw Vicky post this in the comments. But do we know what Stu has done? Is he set to testify against her? Has any of that happened yet?
So from what everyone is thinking, because he originally said that I'm innocent, I'm going to go to trial, I am not guilty, and he signed the documents and then came back and said, you know what, I'm changing my plea. I'm changing it to guilty. And in the guilty plea that he changed it to, he acknowledged legitimately, I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew that this wasn't good. I knew that there were people being frauded. I was a part of this, just completely taking ownership. But the only reason he would take a plea from an attorney's perspective, and I've talked to 3 attorneys about this, the Bravo docket, Ronald Richards, and Emily D. Baker, for him to take a plea, the only thing that would benefit him in doing so is to throw somebody under the bus, which everyone is thinking, because he was the right-hand man from what we see on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Everyone's thinking that person that he's going to throw under the bus would be Jen Shah. So why he wouldn't take, otherwise he would have just gone and fought for his life, you know, in a trial, because even when he changed his plea from guilty to not guilty, again, he signed under penalty of perjury. So they tacked on, that's why, you know, they said Stuart Smith is looking at up to 70 years in prison, because they tacked on another like 10 or 15 years for not, you know, pleading guilty in the first place. Because you sign that's a legal document. It's wow.
This is going to be wild to watch play out, particularly because we'll be in the reunion episodes of Salt Lake City by that point. So I'm interested to see exactly what's going to happen. And they're filming season 3. So this is about to be wild this year. Right. And Adam, thank you so much for that update, because it can be a little bit confusing for the person who is, again, I'm not a legal expert, but I understand some of what's happening, but not all of it.
Right. Well, and someone said in your chat too, see Yoo-Hoos, and apparently someone else pled guilty. Yes, there was another defendant who just pled guilty this past week, changed his plea. His name's Chad Allen, just changed his plea. And from if you're going based off of Ronald Richards' tweets, it looks like he would change his plea in order to throw somebody under the bus, which Ronald Richards is assuming would be Jen Shah. So that's the scary part here, is there are a lot of people changing their pleas, and a lot of people coming forward with, okay, well, give me less time and I will tell you exactly where to look.
It's going to be crazy. Definitely crazy. Adam, I want to talk about, we have the last scene of the episode is Whitney and Heather going to visit Meredith, who is prepared, you know, an afternoon kind of with some type of spa treatment for I've done it before when I lived in Miami. It feels like it's supposed to be the same as like doing like 1,000 crunches or something like that. It vibrates on your stomach and is supposed to stimulate your ab muscles. It may work. I don't know. I didn't pay for it because they wanted me to just promote them on Instagram.
He's an influencer.
But would I pay for it? Probably, if I felt like it would give me the results that I wanted. They do other stuff now, which is like these injections to dissolve the fat, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, we see them going over there, and they want to have a discussion with Meredith about, you know, exactly what's going on. They feel like Meredith wants to apologize to them. Whitney is literally convinced that Meredith is on a cover-up spree for some reason. What she's trying to cover up, I still don't know. And they finally get to Meredith's house. Meredith apologizes, much to my dismay. And she does tell them what date the memorial was on. And it was apparently on Tuesday, correct? As it was whatever day that Heather
It was the Monday. Yeah, it was the Monday.
Okay, it was the Monday. So it was on the Monday. Heather, I guess, had the date correct.
Right.
And now they are speculating out loud why Lisa would make it seem as though it was another day.
But I don't really think she did. I think that when Lisa jumped on the phone, it was such like a manic moment of like what just happened. And I think that she said, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to call Meredith. Like she's at her family's memorial. And they're like, well, why would she say it's on that day? It doesn't matter if that was the actual day of the memorial or if she was spending time with her family or whatever the case was. Like it just kind of came out of her mouth because she associated with that's what she's doing the next 2 days. I feel like they really took this and ran with, well, why is Lisa lying on you? And she just threw it out there. Like, I don't know. I felt like, one, I was surprised that Whitney was right and Meredith was inviting them over to apologize. Two, I was shocked at how fast, like it gives me whiplash on how fast it could be Meredith's fault. And then boom, now we're after Lisa. Bad weather is on it. And then three, it's like if you watch back, are you watching Real Housewives of Miami right now?
I'm not caught up on Miami.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene where Dr. Nicole is talking about Lars's OnlyFans, and the women are like, "Well, you called her a hooker, and this, and this, and this." And you go back and you see the scene, and she just said, "I think that it's unsavory. Like, it's not. Why would she do this? She's a beautiful woman." She didn't say any of those other words, but that's what it got misconstrued and painted into. And you also just made another good point. Whitney took the information back upstairs after, calling out Meredith and spun it in that moment into something that it wasn't. And I feel like this is a very common theme for the housewives.
Especially for bad weather.
For bad weather.
And so next week we're going to get the finale, but there is a moment from this week that I just have to have us appreciate, Adam. And it's literally this moment right here.
Women.
I do not know why this scene right here takes me out. It just, to me, feels quintessential housewives, specifically Salt Lake City.
That's what I'm going to miss about Mary. Like those are the things, like those moments. She's really won me over. And I do have a theory. I think, honestly, I really feel like Mary will. I'm questioning with, you mentioned the social media posts earlier and the things that are coming out. And like page 6 is like Mary exits Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And then this same week, she's commenting just 3 days ago, that's not true. This is a fabrication, a complete lie. And this is not the first time. Then that Instagram page, the Bravo fan account, CC Loves Us or something like that?
Oh, yes, that's my boo.
Yeah, okay. So CC also, there was something posted between CC and Mary where CC asked the same question and Mary was like, no, that's not true. So my question was, I've talked to a couple people who are associated with Salt Lake City and would know, and they let me know, no, Mary's not coming back for season 3. But then I think about it and I'm like, you don't know me that well. So are you telling me something? You don't want to give me a spoiler because God forbid I come on here and I share something and I try to get ahead of it. And it's like, you saw it on Up and Adam first. So no, we're not going to give that to you because we can also get in trouble. Or are you telling me the truth? Because why else, if Mary's not associated with the franchise and she's saying, well, that's not true. But then you guys are filming in front of her church. Why would you film in front of her church and continue a storyline about a housewife that wouldn't be coming back? Unless they're trying to go with this whole like Kathy Hilton didn't show up for the first month and a half of filming of Beverly Hills. Maybe Mary, they're trying to fight to get her to come back and film. I don't know, but I have a feeling Mary will be back. I do feel that way.
You know what, Adam? We will have to wait and see. I'm excited to see what Salt Lake City brings us next. This has been the wildest last couple of months to me, for any Housewives show that we've ever had. So they brought something to the table that I feel like no other show has been able to bring in quite some time. And I do think that when we look back on these seasons of Salt Lake, particularly this one, people are gonna talk about this season for like years to come. I definitely believe that.
I agree with that. I mean, it's just pure chaos. Like we get some seasons of franchises where we legit get through the whole season and we're like, we don't know one storyline, one chaos, like what happened this season. I slept through the whole season. And then you give us Salt Lake City and it's just, especially season 2. That's why I always like to give if it's a new franchise or, a new housewife, I like to see them in a second season because you can't really know what you're going into unless you've lived through it going in your first season. You're kind of learning what works and then rewatching the season and seeing how people react. And they want you to be a little bit more crazy or come out of your shell. And then season 2, it's like they all come in like, boom, let's do this. You want to play? Let's play.
Yeah.
I feel like they came to play.
Yep, I agree. Adam, thank you so much for participating today. I appreciate your time. We all appreciate your time. Can you tell people anything that you have going on or things that you might have done? Because I know that you have done some things. So if you want to let people know so we can head over there and get excited about them or just watch and let us know where they can find them.
Hey, yeah. If you guys haven't checked out my Heather McDonald interview on Juicy Scoop, you can find it on her YouTube channel. And also we're sending love and prayers to Heather because she just fractured her skull. So that was she was doing a stand-up show and she passed out because she was dehydrated and hit her head. And she's okay from what I heard, but also I haven't talked with her. I reached out to her, but I wouldn't expect her to reach out to me right away. And then also, guys, if you want to come see us in person, Zach and I are going on a little 3-city mini tour, which is part of a much larger project, but we're going to Los Angeles, Nashville, and New York City in April. And if you guys want to come join us, play around with some of your favorite Bravo celebrities, comedians, YouTubers, content creators. We have a lot of fun guests. You can go to spillingtealive.com and grab your tickets. That's all.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I might have to try to make that.
Hey,
New York.
I have a special ticket for you on that one.
I'm going to have to try to make that New York one because that sounds real close to me. So that might have to happen.
I would love that.
Adam, thank you so much yet again. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys for your comments. Thank you for participating in a very respectful way. And thank you for your super chats as well. Adam, so next week, guys, I will be out of town. So we'll either try to do this on maybe Tuesday or I'll figure out a way to do it solo because I won't be back in time and I don't trust the internet in hotels anymore. So, they're the worst for lives.
They're the worst. Yeah.
So we'll figure it out behind the scenes and we'll let you guys know what we're going to do about it. And then until we talk again, we will see you guys in the next video.